I love the $5 Paint Club. I love the $5 Paint Club. They will teach me how to paint all my projects. Show me how to paint furniture with a new mindset. I love the $5 Paint Club.
Hi there, welcome to the $5 Paint Club. This tutorial we are going to be doing a driftwood technique, sometimes referred to as weathered wood technique. This is one of our easier techniques to learn. It has a huge impact though. The hardest part of this technique is actually finding a piece to do it on. It works best with natural unfinished wood, like this lovely piece here from Ikea. A lot of times this technique I've used on mainly signs because it is hard to find a piece of furniture that is still in its raw state. You obviously can go through the steps of stripping the piece if you really, really love it and you really want to do this technique with it. But otherwise, it's great on pieces. This is like a $35 or $40 Ikea side table or dresser. It'd be great for your home, little table in the entryway, bedrooms, kids' rooms, etc. It's a great little piece for like $35 or $40. And like I was saying, the technique works really well with signage, as you know, creating a nice sign for your home, or if that's something that you do as a side business, or maybe your real business. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go walk through the products real quick that we're using. There is a product list, a product guide and outline for this technique. The products we're going to be using is obviously paintbrush of your choice, off-white chalk paint of your choice. We're going to be using Alabaster by Sherwin-Williams mixed with pixie dust. A gel stain or a regular stain. It needs to be oil-based though. We'll get to that in a minute why it has to be oil-based. Gloves, you're going to need gloves for this one. Spray bottle, and a little cup that you're going to be mixing water in later on. Obviously some rags because you're going to be staining. So your wipe on, wipe off method. If you've not ever stained before, you should hop on over to the 101 tutorial, and there's a section, I believe it's section 4, maybe 5. I think it's section 4 is about staining. So pop on over there to section 4 of the 101 tutorial if you've never stained a piece before, for some tips and tricks. But other than that, we're going to go ahead and get started on this piece. The tutorials are mainly going to be watch and learn. I'm going to try to give you some tips and tricks as you go along. But this is, like I said, this is one of our easier ones. The hard part on this one is just finding a piece. I said this is from Ikea. And when we get done, this is super fun. I get these at Home Depot. I think they're like about $4. We're going to add some mid-modern century MCM, mid-modern century legs to it. Kind of jazz it up a little bit. But we'll get to that later. We're using an oil-based stain on this one because part of this technique is allowing the paint to absorb the stain, causing an aged look. So it's very, very important that you use an oil-based stain. If you use a water-based stain, there's not going to really be anything for the paint to pull through. So you do an oil-based stain, think of oil and water. You put the chalk paint over the top, and the chalk and the paint is going to pull the stain through and cause a weathered wood look. There's all different kinds of colors of stain out there on the market. For this one, we're using a dark colored stain. You're going to be using a gel stain for this. It doesn't really matter if you use a gel or a regular. I happen to like gel stains for pieces like this because I don't have to worry about drips and runs and all of that. When I'm using stains a lot, I like to throw brushes away. I don't like to save them, but I keep them in the rubber gloves so that they stay fresh when I need them. But after a couple days, they get yucky, so you gotta throw them away from there. So we're gonna go ahead and start staining. There is no prep that needs to be done to this piece because it is raw, natural state. I've got it up on these little teepees. You can find these at Home Depot, Amazon, and it helps keep the piece up off, especially when you're working the bottom and then you take them off, you know, when you're getting ready to put the finishing touches on it. So for the stain, we're gonna just get going here. Now when you're staining, you wanna do it in small sections. Don't go all crazy with the piece or you're gonna run into some issues with the stain getting sticky, especially gel stains. You don't want sticky gel. Some fun color combinations that you could use would be a dark gray stain. You could do dark gray with the white over it, would be really pretty. I know you're probably saying, wow, that's really dark, but most woods have brown undertones to them. When you're staining with oil-based stains, there's usually a pretty high VOC content to them. You want to do it in well-ventilated areas. Our workshop here is pretty well ventilated, so you may hear a fan running in the background. Hopefully you don't, but just in case you do. So like I said, just do in small sections, just small, even sections. I'm pretty confident that needs about 10 minutes, so I'm gonna work around to the front here. I got some super cute drawer pulls for this as well. They're like little arrows, so I can't wait. My favorite part of painting is always the pretty part of it, the part that you get to like dress it up. Add some pretty knobs, add some gilding waxes to it. Maybe even some fun little papers on the side of the piece. Okay, so once you've stained, you want to get your lint-free rag. I use old t-shirts for all of that. And you can kind of do some tests to see how it's going. That needs a little bit more baking time over here. So we're just going to keep on going. As long as you don't allow your stain to get sticky, all is well. I always get asked about doing the side drawers and the insides of the drawers. I do them sometimes and then sometimes I don't. With this piece, I don't know, I might do some fun papers, some Mod Podge or something inside. We'll kind of see. I'm not quite sure yet what I want to do. I always try to say, like, try to plan your piece out before you paint it. But that would be for people that don't live on a whim like I do. I prefer to start painting and go, oh, you know what, that would look really good. I want to do that. So if I start getting loopy here in a few minutes, it's because of the stain is super smelly. I'm kind of kidding, by the way. I'm loopy as it is. Now, if you're wondering about, you decided to take a shortcut and not watch the one-on-one video. If you're using oil-based stains, you definitely want to use a natural bristle brush. If you're using water-based stains, you want to use a synthetic bristle or nylon bristle brush. All right, let's see what we have here. That's nice. Now, in this technique, when you're taking your stain off, you actually don't want to get, you can see that I'm kind of just lightly doing it. You actually want to kind of leave some of the stain there. And that's going to be for the paint portion of it. This is not a technique where you want to stain one day and paint the next day. You definitely want to set out time to do it all in one day. Oops. Ooh, that looks pretty. Now, a little tip for you. If you're actually lucky enough to use a brand new piece like an Ikea piece like this, I would actually do this technique before you put it together. Obviously for a tutorial, I don't want to be doing a whole bunch of pieces and you guys are like, what the heck is she doing? And the stain is drying very quick. Now don't worry about it looking like garbage. It's okay. You just need a little bit of that stain to come through. And then once I get the bottoms done here, then I'll take it off the little stand. I just do this to kind of try to keep the table clean. I like using stains. I use them a lot. I like getting messy and dirty, and stains to me are messy and dirty. And now remember, there's going to be a coat of paint going over this. So you can see there's some streaking there, and it's just not what you would call like a masterpiece stain job. But just, it's okay. We're going to be putting paint over it, so don't worry. I got this. You'll see, I promise. I know some of you are sitting there going, what in the world has she got herself into? Now, if you watched the 101 video, you probably saw me say, don't ever dip your brush in the container, but I'm going to tell you, when you're using gel stains, it's a little impossible not to dip. It's hard to get out what you need to, but if you are using a liquid stain, go ahead and put it in a different container when you use it. Now you want to make sure if you're adding decorative pieces to it that you also paint those alongside, so you don't have to get the stain back out again and go through all of that. So make sure you kind of do everything together. My rag is pretty well saturated, so I can actually just kind of do a little. Now down here where I'm getting some stain on the metal, it's okay because I can just take some paint thinner to that. I'm going to end up getting paint on it too, so I can take some mineral spirits and paint thinner to that later. I kind of want to go around a little bit and make sure there's no drips or runs or anything like that. Your rag should be pretty well saturated with stain, so if you do need to touch up any areas, you can do that. Alrighty, looks good. Yay! Alright, so for now I'm going to actually take off my sticky stain gloves, and now we get to head to the fun part, the painting part of it. What we're going to need this step here, a cup, your off-white paint, spray brush, or spray bottle, sorry, and sanding sponge. All right, so what we want to do, we want to create a paint wash. And what exactly is a wash? A wash is something that's half paint, half water, 3 parts paint, 1 part water. Anytime you take paint and you thin it down with water, I refer to that as a wash. I like to add the water with the squirt bottle. It gives me a little bit more control. It should be very, very thin, very watery. So if you're using a really thick paint like a Fusion or a CC Caldwell, you're gonna have to add a lot more water to it. Those paints tend to be fairly, that's pretty good right there. So with this, you're going to need your rags as well. You're just going to kind of do a brush over like this. And it's going to look a little messy, but that's okay. I swear that there is a method to my madness. Now it is perfectly fine to do this over your stain before it's dry. That's actually kind of the purpose of it. You're going to start seeing some of it bleed through. You definitely want that bleed through. Just keep going with your paint wash. Now for this technique, a nice 2-inch angled brush is really the perfect brush for this piece. There's no detail, there's not a lot of detail in this piece. You can kind of brush back over it again. I'm OCD, so those brush marks bother me, even though I know that they're not going to be there when I get done. For now, I'm not going to worry about the insides of the drawers. I know most of you who have painted before, you don't really mess with them either, but I will do something with them. So depending on where I end up putting this piece. If you find at some point you get a little bit too much paint, more paint on it than you want, you can just give it a little spray like that with the water. Now, a lot of people might call this like a barnwood technique, or I don't know. I think to me, barnwood, growing up in Oregon, barnwood was always red. I have a hard time associating the grays and the deep browns with barnwood. To me, that's more driftwood style, but whatever you want to call it is up to you. Okay, let's see how this front part is drying. Now it's okay if you start getting a little bit of stain on your brush. You want to try to avoid getting too much stain on your brush because it could cause some issues in the cleaning side. Remember, this is an oil-based stain, so it's going to require a little bit more than water to get it out. And again, don't worry about it looking kind of shabby there. We're going to get that all fixed up, you'll see. What's nice about this technique is on the sealing side of it, you can just do a simple waxing when it comes to sealing it. Doesn't require anything. You can do a polyacrylic if you want to, but it's not really necessary. You don't really need it. Now, one thing that we're doing by getting this paint on here in the thin coats is allowing the stain, remember, to allow the paint to absorb the stain. I know what you're thinking. It looks like a hot mess, but trust me with this. You can see that when you do these washes like this, that for the most part, it dries really, really fast. So what we're gonna do is sandpaper, water, kind of a light spray like this. We're gonna do a light sanding. And anywhere you have like these uneven, these uneven marks like over here, I'm gonna basically move that paint. See, kind of move that paint around the water. You'll see there's some areas like a little bit thicker, right here. You can kind of just thin that out a little bit. You can also do it with a rag as well. You can also spray a little bit here, and then let's see, move some of that out of the way. And this is when you know you have OCD. So let's say you have something like that happen. All you do is you go and take a little bit more paint, spray it so it's wet, and there we go. And voila. I like. Now, the idea behind weathered wood is it's never supposed to look evenly or perfect as if you were staining a piece. That's the beauty of weathered wood. Now you can see right here, this is bothering me. So I'm just gonna kind of put a little bit of stain on it and see. I think it's actually in the wood itself, but it's bothering me. So we'll just go ahead and you can take the rag that you have some stain, you know, like you would stain on, just kind of do that with it. You're your own worst critic, so while we let that sit, we'll move on to the side over here. Yeah, I definitely think that is in the wood because I'm getting it over here as well. So I think it's just how the piece was put together. And my paint's thickening up, so I needed to add a little bit of water to that. I'll just kind of do that. All right, I think that's going to be a little bit better. To this side here. You can see here the stain bleeding through the paint. I love this technique. It's almost like foolproof. It doesn't really matter, like even if you have a little jacked up spot over here. You know, if you look at driftwood, there's nothing perfect about it, but it's so perfect in every way. Let's work on this. Now, if you've got to fix a spot, like we did here, when you go to resand, again, just kind of do the whole thing again, because that'll just move the paint and allow it to look a little bit more even. Looks good, looks good, looks good. Just kind of blend that paint in so you can't tell that it was a boo-boo. Well, it may not have been a boo-boo, but to me it was a boo-boo. Ooh, I like that. That looks good. Beautiful. Normally, if you were doing this, you would take the drawers out. But again, when you're filming a tutorial, it's best to do it like this. So I know you're probably saying at home, why did she just take the drawers out? Also, because this is an Ikea piece, the drawers don't come out. You have to unscrew them out. So to make the tutorial better to understand, we will leave the drawers in. Pretty. You want to be careful with your hands because I've got some stain on my hands, so when I touch the piece it transfers it. I think that's about it. So what we need to do is allow this piece to dry really well. We're going to give it another good sanding when it's dry, and then kind of touch up anything I don't like. I'll touch up. But so far, I am absolutely loving what I see. Let me work on the top a little bit more, but when it's dry, that is when we will go ahead and wax it and put our fun legs on it, and then also do the drawer pulls for it. And then we have a really cool piece that is like so awesome. Love it. Well, we will come back in about 24 hours. I'm gonna let this sit. We'll come back, get it all waxed up, cleaned up, get the legs installed, the handles installed, and then they have an amazing finished piece. It's just lovely. So anyways, we'll see you back in 24 hours. Hi there, welcome back. Here we are 24 hours later with our lovely little driftwood, weathered wood, layered wood look. It's super cute. I wish you guys could see it in person. It definitely has like a layered texture sort of look to it, but it's a very smooth finish. I'm quite happy with the way that it dried overnight. Again, when I look at it in pictures, it looks very different than it does in person. But I'm quite pleased with it. You can see the different styles of the technique here. You know, you could get something more weathered up here, a little bit finished here. Here we're bringing the edges in there. It's a very, you know, each section is very different. And so you can kind of see where you can have a lot of fun with this technique. We ran into a little problem with the legs earlier this evening when I went to attach the legs before we started to film. I noticed that there wasn't anything to attach the legs to. We ended up having to make a trip to Lowe's and get some 2x3s to put in there. We went ahead and inserted the 2x3s, glued them, Brad nailed them in, and then attached the legs to that. It's just kind of a fun, funky piece. This isn't something meant for everybody's home. Definitely mid-modern century MCM with the legs added to it. It's just kind of fun and funky. Not, I would say this piece probably doesn't appeal to the masses, but it's okay, won't hurt my feelings. We added some knobs here, some cute little arrow knobs we got at Hobby Lobby. I'm going to show you how I went ahead and distressed them because the natural knobs are a little bit white in color, a little too white for our piece. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. This piece, I'm going to be sealing this piece up with wax. This is a great piece to seal with wax. Basically, I am a big fan, I'll say it over and over and over, I'm a big fan of waxing. I love what it does. I love the feeling, the texture, everything. So the wax that I'm using for this particular piece is a Pixie Dust Hemp Paste Finishing Wax. It's an all-natural organic product, hemp oil base. It's also a vegan product, so it's not made with beeswax. It's actually made with a wax from a cactus plant. When you wax, wax on, wax off. Kind of remember the Karate Kid days. Wax on, wax off. Because this is a stained wood piece, it's going to absorb the wax a little bit more than just a standard painted piece. It's also going to make the colors pop a little bit more. You'll see here in just a little bit. Again, just kind of wax on, wax off. Almost a little too high for me now, but that's okay, we'll get it here. If you're deciding that you're gonna wanna wax a piece, much like this one, there's lots of different wax products on the market. Some of the good ones that I've tried in the past, CC Caldwell's makes a great clear wax. It's a very soft wax. It's good for beginners. It's very forgiving. Annie Sloan makes a fantastic dark wax. There's also a few other natural waxes on the market. Wise Owl has like a furniture salve. Dixie Belle Paint Company has a liquid wax. I believe Fusion has a liquid wax too. There's lots of different waxes in the market, so definitely find, as I will always preach, find what works for you. Wax is probably the one thing you're going to find me be the most partial about. I love our wax product. that we make at Pixie Dust. It's one of a kind. It's an amazing, amazing product. I love how that it's all natural. I love how it feels in my hands. I love what it does to furniture. I love that I can use it on my wood pieces instead of using Pledge. All right. So we're gonna let that sit for a little bit before we buff that out. And we want that to absorb into the wood. And while that sits, we're gonna work on distressing our little knobs here. This is actually pretty easy to do. Now I have the brush that we used last night to do the staining part of it. So as you know, I usually keep them inside the rubber gloves that I take off to kind of keep them fresh. We're gonna use that. So I'm just gonna kind of brush on the wax. Now get over here so you can see. I get these knobs at Hobby Lobby. Of course, when they're 50% off, that way they run about $1.99-ish, right around there. You see that? And then you're gonna take the rag here and you're gonna kind of wipe it off. All right. Once that part is done, make sure you get like any remaining stain that could be pooling around it. Okay, and then once that's done, I'm going to take some Gilding Wax here. I'm just gonna kind of rub it like this and just kind of rub it on. I'm doing this because if you notice in this, even though we didn't use any grays at all, we used a dark brown and an off-white. The natural process here caused some gray undertones. So I'm going to use this silver Gilding Wax here, metallic wax, and you just kind of gently wipe it off, buff it, until you get like the look that you want. You can see they're all going to be different, and you can rub a little harder if you want like it to be a little bit lighter. That looks good. I like that. Now, a couple ideas for knobs. If you don't like the arrows, you could take some driftwood or sticks from outside. You could go to Home Depot and get these screws, and you could get some sticks, kind of drill in a little hole, and then make little stick pulls, which would be really cool with this kind of finish. I think it's at Michael's. You can buy bags of little driftwood pieces. That would be cute too. You could take some driftwood, drill it, and make like little driftwood knobs for it. And there we have it. Yay! I love it. So it looks like the wax is dry enough for us to start buffing. And then we can call this tutorial a completion. Actually, we'll call this tutorial a natural success. How about that? I don't know what to call it. When you're taking the wax off, you know, wax on, wax off, just like you're buffing a car out. Be careful with your hands. I'm my own worst enemy. You want to be careful with your hands if you have stain on them. That will cause fingerprints. Usually when I'm waxing, I'll do 2 coats of wax, usually a couple hours. Like I will allow this to soak in and then do another coat of wax more. One to really like get into the wood, because this was a natural finished piece. Get into the wood and then put another coat of wax on it more as a protectant. You know, in case you never know if somebody's going to be putting glasses up here, any sort of water, anything like that. So you definitely want to try to protect the piece as much as you can. You could also, if you're not comfortable using wax, you can also use a polyacrylic as well. So that concludes our driftwood technique. I hope that you guys have a lot of fun with this. I love doing this technique on signs and smaller pieces. As you can see, it's hard to get the same look on every section of it. I think that that's part of the character of the technique, but when you're doing a sign, fantastic technique for that. So I hope you guys have a fun time experimenting with this technique. I hope you go out and find some wood. In the outline, I've given you some project ideas that you can apply this to. I've also listed all of the supplies that we used. I think I got everything in there. And also the dresser, the knobs, the legs, where you can find those as well. If you have any questions, let me know. Off to the left-hand side of this tutorial, you're going to see a little tab that says discussion. If you do have any questions, you're welcome to post in the VIP Facebook group, but you're also welcome to post right there in discussion. Keep in mind, whatever you post in discussion is public view, so everyone can see it, and others may respond to it as well if you do have questions about the technique. For now, I hope you guys have a great time with it. I hope this inspires you to look at natural wood in a different light and to have fun with it. And for now, that is it. We'll see you guys later. Bye.